It's not a particularly bold claim to state that shooting demons and video games go hand in hand. This said, video games and shooting demons go hand in hand, and Shadows of the Damned is no exception. In this 2011's action, survival, horror, shooter, whatever, you play as Garcia Hotspur, a demon hunter with an expletive for a middle name who is on a quest to save his girlfriend Paula from the Lord of Demons himself. Garcia has one main tool at his disposal, a demon named Johnson that acts as his torch, guns, and motorcycle at one point. As serious of a concept as this sounds like it could be, this game is almost entirely a comedy, in line with the director's other works. Unlike a lot of games, the director of this game is actually important to understanding why this game is as unhinged as it is, and thus the director of this game is Suda51. Suda51, or 51, I've heard it said both ways, is a man who directed and wrote video games like No More Heroes, No More Heroes 2, No More Heroes 3, Killer 7, Killer is Dead, and Lollipop Chainsaw. These games are, for the most part, extremely bizarre, balancing comedy, violence, mature themes, and sexual elements in a story that's amazing and fun to experience. Anyhow, back to Shadows of the Damned. For this essay, I'm going to talk about the story, the gameplay, the characters, and how much of a pain in the ass it is to find and play this game. Sit down, strap in, and shut up as we go on a journey to save the girl from the Lord of Demons himself. Actually, side note before beginning, Lollipop Chainsaw was written by James Gunn. Yes, that James Gunn. The one who wrote Slither, The Suicide Squad, Guardians of the Galaxy, and a bunch of other movies you don't know or care about. But don't worry, dear listener, we'll cover Lollipop Chainsaw one day, and it may be sooner than you'd expect. The game starts off with a demon hitting the ground, bloody and on the verge of being sent back to hell. Then we see our hero, Garcia, as he's about to execute this demon using his demon companion's gun form. The hero and demon have some exchange, and then Garcia blows the dude's head off when he realizes that this was just a distraction. He runs up to his apartment, and then you get thrown into the tutorial. Learn how to move, how to do things, and most importantly, how to use Johnson's revolver form. Your apartment is under siege, your girlfriend Paula is in danger, and you do what any demon hunter would do, and you start blasting. Blast enough hell monkeys, as Garcia so eloquently calls them, and then see the Lord of Demons himself, Fleming. He's here to take Paula for some reason, and then he insults Garcia's manhood, talking about how his Johnson will never measure up to his, and that his powers are weak. Basically, the entire exchange is just boner jokes, and it's pretty great, in all honesty. But eventually, Fleming opens his entire body, consuming Paula, and he heads back to hell by jumping out of your window into a portal below, and you follow through. You eventually land and you're on a highway. Some lesser reviewer made jokes saying it's literally a highway to hell, but not me. I'm above such low-hanging fruit for my jokes. So anyways, Johnson turns into a motorcycle and you drive on a highway, surprisingly absent of fire. Eventually, you reach the gates of hell. You have no choice, so you kick down the door, Johnson in hand, and begin your quest to save the girl. You're in a village. Johnson turns into a torch, and he acts as a tour guide of sorts. He knows this world. He was here until he fought to break free, and so the two begin their quest. Fight some demons, and learn a core mechanic of the game, light. Light is an important tool in hell because the darkness is overwhelming and will literally suck the life out of any living thing trapped in it. And so, once you're in hell, you finally learn what Johnson's revolver form is called. After learning about how you can use the light shot to stun demons and activate/reactivate the goat lamps throughout the world when necessary. Johnson's revolver form is called the Boner, and so Garcia is running around hell, boner in hand, blasting demons and using an ability called the light shot, which shoots out of the boner and is a ball of white light. Yeah, this game's amazing. So you get the idea. You make your way through the city of the damned and various other locations in hell, all on the way to Fleming's, quote, Castle of Hassle, as the locals call it. Along the way, you fight assorted bosses, solve puzzles involving darkness, light, and murder, and unlock more and more powerful forms of Johnson, like a shotgun that shoots skulls and an LMG that shoots teeth, and all that fun stuff. The only other thing that matters story-wise is that on the way to save the girl, Garcia watches Paula die about 900 times. I don't know the actual number, it's not my job to count kills, that's for someone else to do. But this does matter later. Along the way to the castle, Garcia and Johnson eventually end up in a library, where Garcia It's just a lot of boss fights and puzzles, and it's pretty cool, all things considered. Speaking of gameplay, it's time to talk about demon hunting. It's the core of the game, and it's pretty solid. So let's break it down and go from boss to boss. Apparently, demons just like opera. Who would have thought? Anyway, Justine's fight is incredibly easy, but one of the coolest fights visually, and it definitely shows. And, of course, there's Fleming himself. He's the final big bad boss, and as such, he's extremely annoying to fight, but once you figure it out, it's not the worst, but the learning curve is a bit shitty. Like how once you've broken him up into several parts, you have to shoot a specific chunk with the dentist's homing attack that takes forever to charge up, or the giant skull you need to launch into the bubble shield, or using the powers of the hot boner's explosive charge. It's a fight that makes you use all of your fully upgraded weapons without telling you what you need to be doing, so expect to run out of ammo several times, likely run out of alcohol, and be on very low health until it's finally over. It's not my favorite fight, especially because he has an attack where he opens his cloak and puts Paula out like a shield, and if you accidentally shoot her, it's an instant game over, so watch it. Eventually he will fall, and as I said in the story section, you have to fight Paula while she's in demon mode. Paula in demon mode is a pretty easy fight. Stage 1 involves you needing to find the right door to escape, and you gotta shoot her wings off and then die together. It's a pretty cool fight, it's incredibly easy by comparison to Fleming, and a much more interesting fight too. All in all, not the worst final boss a game could have, and at least it's a poetic one. A worthwhile end to a worthwhile game. Yeah, this game isn't that complicated, and while the gameplay is at the forefront of the experience and the story takes a backseat, the characters are still the star of what makes this an enjoyable experience. From Garcia to Johnson to Christopher the half-demon shopkeep to One-Eyed William, hell ain't empty here, so let's talk about the cast of characters on this journey. Garcia's pretty cool. He's pretty detached from reality and being a normal guy, but he's really good at what he does, and in part it's because the machismo demon hunter man that he is, and in part because he's such a stereotypical badass that it almost feels like a parody of what he is. I may be overhyping this character a bit, but he's still a decent character to play as on this trip. Johnson is the real star of the show. He's a flaming skull demon that escaped hell and became a tool to help kill demons. He's also British, which explains why he went to hell and became a demon in the first place. He acts as your tour guide, and it's fascinating to see him do this thing where he talks about how all of the weird things are in hell. Like how strawberries are a demon's favorite fruit because they're actually made out of tongues, or how alcohol is incredibly prevalent in hell. It's all wonderful. Also, he's the gun, so that's respectable. You upgrade him by shoving blue gems into the holes in his skull. He's basically a crime against nature and can't swear without being censored. Honestly, he's a real standout character, and that's even without mentioning the big thing. See, you've heard of the Big Iron, but are you ready for the Big Boner? Exactly. It's a mission-exclusive thing where Johnson makes a phone call that makes his iron become the Big Iron. And by that I mean he becomes a comically long revolver and nothing else. The mission kinda sucks, but the Big Boner is a very funny concept. The demons are pretty varied characters. Fleming is definitely a thing in this game. I honestly don't care about him all that much. He mostly just stands as a target and source of dick jokes, which is commendable. Justine is a very strange character with a tragic backstory and is an odd character considering she really only is able to sing opera. The Grimm sisters are kinda interesting, Stinky Crow is kinda funny for a one-note joke character and all that jazz. Christopher is my favorite demon though. He's the shopkeep man who sells you various things you'll need in exchange for gems. He doesn't do much, but I love him. He's a really dumb character that makes this experience a lot more enjoyable. Of course, I need to wrap this very short character section up with Paula. She's a really interesting character for this game. She constantly dies in front of you, she'll go zombie mode and hunt you down a couple of times and some other stuff, but what's really interesting is the lore behind the character. Throughout the game, it's hinted that she's cursed to be with Fleming forever, which is why she constantly tries to escape him and the torture by reaching the land of the living. Garcia's story of how they met even reflects how Paula is constantly scared of going back to hell, and her curse also explains how she can be tortured over and over again and never die. It's because Fleming won't let her die. His solution was to make her partially a demon so that he had control, thus explaining her demon powers in the final battle of the game, and her demon mode breakdown when the demons come up to take her back to hell. Her and Garcia's relationship is fascinating, as they live in a constant cycle of going to hell and back, killing hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of demons every time. It's an interesting cycle that I'm sure has some deeper literary connections, and it'd be interesting to argue that they're a retelling of whatever story is like this, but that's for someone smarter and more academic than me. I just want to write about the funny game where you kill demons with a weapon called the Boner in a pseudo-academic way. So here's the thing. This game originally released on the Xbox 360 and PS3, and it's actually playable through backwards compatibility on an Xbox One and Xbox Series X or S. So you'd think you'd be able to purchase it digitally from the Microsoft Store, right? But you can't, for some stupid reason. Now, the obvious answer is that because EA lost the copyright and it went back to the original company that created it. The game can't be purchased, as the only released version has EA's insignia all over it. Thus creates an extremely annoying paradox that makes this game extremely annoying to get. But hey, I was able to acquire a physical copy and play it, so it's not that hard to find it, right? Well, yes and no. In concept, it should be easy, but it's a pain in the ass to find a copy of it online, and it's a bit of a rarity to find it in person. The point is, if the console lets you play the game, and the store shows the game like it exists, then you'd think you'd be able to play the thing. It's really annoying that in order to play the game, you have to go out of your way to find a physical copy. This said, at least physical copies exist, because nothing is worse than finding out a game was only available digitally, and then going to find it, only to see it's no longer available in any capacity. It sucks, it's tedious, and I hate it. Games should be accessible, especially if you're able to play it on a console. If the store says I can play the game, then I should be able to buy the damn thing digitally. I love physical games, don't get me wrong. But the thing is, sometimes you just want to buy the thing for like $20 digitally and play it in a convenient format. So many games are lost, and as Xbox backwards compatibility does for and as much as Xbox backwards compatibility does for preservation of games, it makes it really hard to play the ones that are rare to find physically and are only available physically. This said, I have some minor hopes for this game becoming easily accessible again. Earlier this year, as of 2020 when I wrote this, a remastered version of Lollipop Chainsaw was announced. And over the years, Limited Run Games has done physical releases for the first two No More Heroes games, as well as digital re-releases for those games releasing alongside them. And so maybe, just maybe, this game won't be left to die in the shadows, because it's so wonderful, and I'd hate to see it just disappear into the abyss like that. Hey, Glazed Ham from the future here. In the section where I say about me having written this in 2020, I made a mistake. I meant to say 2022 when I wrote this. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a dumb, stinky fool, and I don't feel like re-recording that entire section again. So, enjoy this little postscript editing note. This game's pretty good. It's definitely one of the best Suda51 games I've played, and one of my favorites of his work. I can't say it's one of my absolute favorite games, but I did enjoy it. The controls are a bit clunky, and the game definitely could use a little more polish, but overall it's an experience I recommend. I know that infamously the director hates this game, and that's due to the assorted rewrites he had to do at EA's requests, but the final product is still pretty good. All in all, I'd give this game a solid 7.5 out of 10, because it's a pretty solid game with some problems that hold it back from being even better than it could be. I do really recommend this one if you're unfamiliar with the Suda51 style, because it's a pretty easily accessible thing from the perspective of someone who hasn't played any of his other games. And as a fan of his work, it's still a really good time, albeit not as over-the-top and iconic as No More Heroes, or as perfect as Lollipop Chainsaw. It's still a really good game. Anyways, thank you for listening to this much shorter than average essay on a game that's a pain in the ass to find. Thanks again, and good night.